So, making another video after, well, in the last video I said I don't go direct to camera very often, and that is true, but I think this is worth it. After the last video, a couple of things happened. The first thing is that a lot of people watched it, and a lot of people appreciated it, and shared thanks, and shared love, and shared questions. And I value and appreciate that. I appreciate people taking the time to watch it, to think about the work, and to consider doing the work. And I've certainly tried to be as forthcoming as I could with anybody who got in touch with me so that we could talk about it. And I want to be clear, there have been people that I haven't been able to get into with it, because it's not an easy thing to get into, and it costs something. Anybody that you talk to about this who's in the middle of it, it costs them something. That's not to say don't have conversations, but know that underneath it, there's an amount of emotional labor. There's an amount of there's a struggle that came with the way in which we learned this. There's a quote that I love from Rainer Maria Rilke. That's something to the effect of, "Do not think that he who seeks to comfort you lives untroubled among the simple and quiet words that sometimes do you good. His life has much difficulty and sadness, where otherwise he would never have been able to find the words." To me, that speaks volumes about what it is to seek advice. Anyways, I got a lot of love, and a lot of people were awake, and they showed up to class, and they wanted to start doing the work, and I just thought, God, that's amazing. I was stoked by it. I'm still stoked by it. And then a second thing happened, is that there were new questions, and they weren't directed at me. I'm not saying people came to me with new questions. Just new questions arose as I was doing work for myself, and as I was talking to people about what they were figuring out and how they were figuring things out. And something dawned on me, that seeing what the work is and understanding what work needs to be done are two different things. And there was a video that I watched. The good friend of mine posted about Dominique Fells and Rhea Milton, two trans women who were killed within the past 3 weeks now, I guess, around June 10th, June 12th, something to that effect. And I watched the whole video that my friend posted. And what my friend spoke about was how one of the women had been misgendered. And I was like, that's bullshit. I was so mad, and I was ready to post and to read and to rah-rah. And I pressed pause on the video because something was bothering me, and I realized I didn't know what the word meant. I didn't know what the word meant. I was so upset watching this video. And in that moment, I thought, there's the work. I'm complicit in this moment because I'm skipping steps. I'm not doing anybody any favors by not knowing. I absorbed empathetically my friend's anger and my friend's pain, and I made it my pain and my anger. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I am angry, and I was angry, but I was not educated because I hadn't done the work. And I started looking back on the things that I post, and I thought, I don't know that I'm lending my voice in a way that is powerful, in a way that it's making changes right across the board. And that's not to say that everybody has to do everything all the time, but I certainly believe as a person that I need to stand up and say, this is the type of ally that I am. And in that moment, I saw a blind spot. I realized I wasn't exactly the type of ally that I thought I was, because I hadn't done the work. It's why I'm making this video. I also had a conversation with a family member, half my family is white, around privilege. And he was interested, and he was asking, and he was honest. And he needed to hear it. And so we started to talk about it. And the more I spoke about it, the less pushback I got. the less buts, the less no's, the less this isn't and I shouldn't have to's. In fact, it was almost instantaneous. And I realized that in talking to him, he didn't know how to do the work. He could hear the words that were being said. You live at the intersection of two privileges. That resonated. But what didn't resonate was, what do I do with that? Where do I start? Now, I think that there are a couple of camps when it comes to this question. Google exists. You can Google it. But sometimes you're in your own way. Sometimes your best intentions are kind of tucked in behind this boulder, and you're pushing and pushing, but you don't know why you're not moving. When tax season comes around, I have a nervous breakdown. Every single tax season. I was audited once. Every single tax season, I have a nervous breakdown. Literally. I cry. I hyperventilate. I can't see straight. I have to go and lie down until the world stops spinning, and it'll probably happen 3 times before I get taxes done, because I have a block that I have created, an obstacle that I'm bad with numbers. And part of it is from the discomfort of being audited. It was a terrible experience. It was really bad. But when I look back at that, I can see that I'm in my own way, because taxes aren't impossible. They're not, but they are for me. They feel like they are for me. And so I started thinking about this family member and how he was just in his own way. And I started thinking about this video and how ready I was to rah-rah and realize I hadn't done the work. I thought I had. I thought I'd been doing it for years, but I hadn't. Not the way I thought I was. And I realized that knowing that you need to do the work and knowing how to do the work they're related, but they're not the same. And not everybody is having an easy time getting from A to B. Furthermore, I've been speaking to a lot of people who are figuring it out on their own, and I'm like, yes, 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 let's talk about it. And as we talk about it, there's these, oh, I don't know, oh, I don't know. And I started to think about the organization of what the work is and how the work gets done. And I wanted to come on here and make an offer of a way in which, a pathway in which we can start to follow when we look at doing the work. Is there an order of operations that might serve me best? I don't know. I think there is. And I want to offer that. And I know that while it's not my job to teach, I meant it when I said, if somebody's interested in doing the work, I want to sit next to them and I want to find out what chapter they're on. And I want to read every word alongside them. I'm not going to do the work for them. I can't. No one could. But if you're sitting here telling me that you want to grow as a person, I want that for you. And maybe it's selfishly, because what I know is that if you grow as a person, we will all benefit. We will all benefit from this. I choose to build my community, and it comes at a cost, and anybody who tells you that it doesn't is lying to you. and quite frankly, if you are getting this on large scales, it should definitely be monetized. And that is a thing that should not go unmissed, especially as you're going through the PR of the work and you're skimming through articles and whatnot. If you're learning from something and that learning allows you a platform to create the next thing, I don't know, make an offer. That's maybe for another conversation. It occurs to me that not everybody is in the same place, and not everybody learns at the same pace, and more importantly, not everybody learned how to learn. In our day-to-day lives, we've come to accept things as normal. These are just normal. And it takes a lot to start walking things back from normal. We've agreed that these are the rules that we play by, and everybody plays by them, so what's the big deal? But this work is about realizing that we've been undereducated and miseducated and misdirected and misguided, and that when we talk about the system, that's the system. That is it. And it's brilliant. It's insidious, but it's brilliant. And to get out of it, or to start to dismantle it, you have to get smart. From history to geography, from housing to homelessness, we've all agreed that there are rules in place, and we just go, that exists, what can I do? Look up de facto segregation. Have you ever stopped to consider that the neighborhoods that you live in, walk through, tend to be very select, singular racial groups, sometimes religious groups, that cultural diversity frequently is singular across neighborhoods? There's a theory for it called de facto segregation, which is a great misdirect because it wasn't an accident. That type of segregation that still exists today, that we look at and we go, oh, this is a bummer, but beyond that, we're not tackling it. It's intentional. It's part of the system. But we have blind spots because, and I say this with all the love in the world, we're just living our lives, and that's all we think we want. I just want to live my life. And so we have a blind spot. They sped the world up to keep everyone busy. In doing so, they shortened attention spans, which reduced our interest in poking holes, and it reduced our capacity for critical thought. That's fine. What's done is done. The work, I think, is about beginning to undo that. Figuring out how to get out of our own way. And it, you know, I was speaking with someone the other day, and we were talking about why people can't hear, why we can't hear, what's in our way. And quite frankly, I think that part of it is the implications. Not just the implication for change. Yes, you're going to have to change. Yes, there's a new normal. Yes, things are going to be different. But the implication of feeling implicated tends to keep people from really digging deep. I spoke to somebody who said, I'm just being honest, I didn't know this existed. I have two parts of my body that respond to that, my head and my heart. My heart goes, man, I feel for you. And my head goes, that's not true. I don't think they're lying. That's not it. I just think that there is something else that was at play. Because the implication that you knew meant that you went along with it, and you're one of the bad ones or something. That's not on offer, from me at least. What is on offer from me is understanding that those implications do implicate you, because that is the system. That is what it means to benefit from a system of white supremacy. It's just that simple. You're in it. In the last video, I painfully tried to quote a friend of mine who talked about the pool, but you're just in the pool. You're in the pool. Water's wet. Like, there's nothing else to be said. But you can get out of the pool and you can dry off. That's where we're at. That's the new education. I just listened to this week's Sunday sermon by Janaya Khan at Janaya the Future. Here's the thing. If you're not already following them, follow them. At Janaya, Janaya, the Future, all one word. Every week they do a Sunday sermon. I will say that it ranges from really powerful to absolutely mind-blowing, and should potentially make you reassess things that you thought you knew and ways in which you thought your heart worked. If you're not watching it, just start. I consider myself reasonably smart. This human is absolutely enlightened. And I knew I was going to make this video, and I happened to have a little bit of time while my little guy's sleeping, and I threw it on while I was getting some work done. And they said something that I want to repeat here, because interestingly, they were also talking about, in a small way to this week, doing the work. They talked about what the work is. and they were saying, guys, it's not a checklist. There isn't a series or a sequence of books or articles or memes or conversations that you get to listen to that you go check, 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 check. Not a racist. It doesn't work like that. But not to say that it doesn't work like that because that's too reductive. It's not that. It's that isn't the work that you're looking to do. The goal, the byproduct, is to start living a life of anti-racism, of anti-oppression. But in the talk, what they really get into is that the work is actually just the work of being alive, of connecting with the thing in you that makes you a human being. One of the references, and I won't get too, just go watch it, but one of the references they make is about, somebody's coming out of a store, you're about to leave a store, and somebody's coming behind you, and they're carrying all these things, and they're bobbling it, and you just hold the door. You don't think about holding the door. It doesn't take work for you to consider holding the door. You just hold the door. Because that is what it means to be alive and be in relationship to another human being. It flows out of you with simplicity. Whereas scurrying out the door and closing it would take work and forethought and intent and malice. It's the work of actually being alive. Just go watch it. They dive deep into that. I'm not going to. I'm not on that level of enlightenment. Facts. But know that not doing the work is accepting a small world. It's accepting a false world where not everybody is invited. There's no checklist. I do think that there are steps involved. There are what I think from my grade 10 computers class, like a flow chart that makes the little thing go through where you get the check mark. And I want to just lay those out because I think they're important. When I talked about myself watching that video and I heard the term misgendered, it upset me to think that I just digested the information without knowing what the information went, and I wore it as if it was something that I had any right to wear. And what was great about that moment is that when I looked inside and I realized that I felt like a fraud, that felt performative, and it, make no mistake, in that moment most certainly was. It allowed me to take that moment apart and scrutinize it and say, well, how could I learn from this? How can I be better? And what it points out for me is that the first step on this journey is actually a glossary. It's about terminology. When we hear a word, when you're reading things right now, when you're listening to people speak, there should be terms that you assume that you know what they mean. And I want to say this, all bets are off. I was talking with a friend yesterday who heard himself use an expression, and it was a benign expression, it was fine, but he heard himself use an expression, and then he thought, I don't know what that means. And then he started to extrapolate the possibilities involved in what it could mean, and how those could be hurting somebody. And he was like, full stop. I need to look up what that means. I need to do a mini deep dive into the origin of that euphemistic sentence. And like I said, it was benign, but what I want to say is that the light bulb that turned on is the light bulb that should be turning on when we're in conversation every day. Because let me tell you something, if you just woke up, if you have just shown up to class, it would be extremely naive to think you know the words in the syllabus. You might know some of them. You might know all of them. Don't take it for granted. That's the first part of the work. Terminology. And so let's actually break down what we're talking about, what I'm talking about when I say terminology. You need to define it, right? Go to the dictionary, do your research, go to encyclopedias if you still have one, Google it, whatever. What is the dictionary meaning of it? What's the connotation? Know those two things, just to start. Just find out what they are. Denotation and connotation are sometimes, often, different. So that seems like a really simple beginning. But there's more to knowing what the terminology is. There are words when we say them that have historical context. There are words when we say them that have historical context. And if you are not up to speed on the historical context, A, you'll get left behind, B, you are going to probably hurt somebody, and C, you are likely misusing the word. Words mean something, words change. Find out the historical context, because there are words that you can say that carry hundreds of years of pain in them, intergenerational pain. And you think, it's just a word in a song that I'm singing. It's not the same. You need to know the true power of the words that are coming out of your mouth. So what is the historical context? And crouched in that, what is the controversy of the word, perhaps? Because typically, I think of the word white supremacy specifically, but white supremacy. I've gotten into countless conversations with people recently, but also just over the course of however many 20 plus years, that white supremacy is one thing. It is hats and burning crosses and nooses. Yeah, it's a part of it. What's the tiniest piece of it? What's the smallest fraction of that? What does that look like? What does it smell like? Do you know? And there's controversy in that. Because to accept that white supremacy could be something so micro that you do it every day doesn't sit well, because you are not Klan. You are not the hat with the noose and the burning. You're not. And so in learning the terminology, we also want to know the historical context, and we want to know the controversy. Why do people push back against a word? How have they pushed back? When have they pushed back? What was happening in history when that happened? I know, it's a lot of work. Build your glossary. Because now, if you start to build your glossary of terminology, when you go into conversation, you understand the whole picture. You can feel it with your heart. You can hear it with your ears, but I was going to point at my brain. With your brain. You can make sense of it in a larger way. What is the current landscape of the terminology? How do people use it today? How do people feel when it's used today? What is appropriate? What is not? Terminology. And most crucially, I think, is how the term and all that information above apply or haven't applied to you. And when I talk about the work that happens, that moment where I went, I don't know what misgendered means, and that's a problem for my life. This is like a beautiful kernel of it. You get to know what it is, and then you say, how is that mine? Where is that mine? When is it mine? When wasn't it? How have I benefited from it being or not being? What is it in relation to me before it ever comes out of my mouth? And certainly before it comes out of my mouth again. How am I in relationship to that word? How do I want to be? For me, terminology. Step one. This is just my order of operations. I would say take it or leave it. If you don't have your own, I would say take it. And then, down the road, adapt it. But this is just mine. Step two, begin to listen to the leaders. Listen with your ears and listen with your eyes. Because they're showing you things and they're telling you things that you need to register on different levels. And I want to talk about what I think those three levels are, what they are for me. I think that everybody in this needs to go through three very clear things. And I'm emphatic about it because I watch people run screaming from it, saying they're allies. And it's one of the places where I don't agree. You need it. I know you don't want it. Nobody wants it. But you need it. emotional growth, a reality fracturing moment, educational support. Those are my three pieces. When I say listen to the leaders, those are the three pieces that need to be affected. Emotional growth. You need your heart cracked open. You don't need your heart broken. You need your heart cracked open. When I say that, I love narrative. I work as an actor. I work as a writer. I love narrative. I believe in the journey, beginning, middle, end. I believe in point and counterpoint in a character's conversation with another character and how they're getting through to each other. I believe that life exists for a simple reason, so that a viewer can ingest it and it can start to help them develop emotionally. That's just me. There are movies, there are documentaries, there are television shows that have the power to crack you open because they're a step removed. They're in the safety of that box that we watch everything else on. They're in the safety of those theaters. Theaters are not safe right now, but one day hopefully they will be again. They're in the safety of those theaters where you sit arm in arm in total darkness where we can't see each other, and you get to go through this transformative moment. Even documentaries are narratively scripted. The documentary didn't happen in the order that it's being given to you. It was reordered so that you could process it properly and have it filter through your feels. What those should do for you, things like Moonlight. Watch Moonlight. Watch When They See Us. Watch 13th. Watch whatever is coming across your desk that you sit and watch for a half hour, an hour, 3 hours. Insecure. All of these will do it for you because it's showing you a world and a way in which the world works where there are moments that, if you buy into them, will puncture you just enough for you to be able to feel the moment. You'll never know and feel exactly what it's like, but I'm telling you that these movies and these TV shows are being made to say, you feel me? Can you feel me? Feel with me. Compassion. Emotional growth is probably the easiest one to access. So I would say do it first. I actually think that your reality fracture should be first, but sometimes easy is nice. The second thing is what I call a reality fracture. Did you watch the video did you watch the George Floyd video? 8 minutes, 46 seconds. Did you watch it? What have you watched that would make you feel like that? I didn't watch this one. Over the course of my life, I think I've watched too many. I watched the first minute and a half of this one, and I was not okay. Videos that fracture your reality, when they show up, it's like threshold concept. You can't come back from it. You can't unsee that shit. It's horrible. I don't want anyone to have to see it, but I think you should. Once should be all it takes. There was a video that was going around of a protester, gentleman with a mask on, and a police officer pulled the mask down to spray pepper spray directly into the kid's mouth. That should mess you up. And if you haven't seen something like this, if you are not watching videos that make you go, wait, what? That can't, why would you do that? That can't happen. Who can that happen to? Can that happen to me? Is that happening to my peers? If you haven't had that moment, please find space to consider immersing yourself just enough that you understand something that you couldn't have processed in any other way. It's not an intellectual exercise. Once your reality fractures, you will never... I was driving the other day with someone, and the way I phrased it was that once your reality fractures, your head is going to start to be on a swivel, because you're going to realize that this is actually the world you live in. And it's a good thing. Because right now, if you're driving and you're just straight ahead listening to your tunes, you're not here with us. I want to be really clear. These videos that I talk about watching are horrible. They are terrible, terrible, terrible things happening in the real world to real people. And if you have past trauma, if you have, you know what you can sustain, you know what you have sustained, you know where you are in the world. I don't think everyone needs to watch a video like that. I do think everyone has to have their reality fractured and be punctured enough to know what it means to fight and why you're fighting. And when I say fighting, right now I'm talking about education. What's it worth? What's driving you? Don't do it for me. Do it for you. That moment is for you. You will change in that moment. I hope that's clear. Because the videos are terrible, and there are many. There's not just one. The third aspect of this is educational growth. I'm leaving books as a separate thing. Educational growth, for me right now, is ears and eyes. Find the leaders, find the voices of liberation, the communities of liberation, whether that's the people who are speaking strategy, the people who are speaking policy, the people who are speaking philosophy, the people who are talking about now with an understanding of history. Because with this newfound terminology that you have, with your heart being cracked open to be able to feel, with your reality fractured to understand why they're fighting, this educational information is going to sound different. Janaya the Future is a fantastic example. Sherilyn Eiffel from the NAACP LDF is a fantastic example. Start watching The Daily Show. Trevor Noah on a regular basis is bringing people on who are having these types of conversations as strategists, as liberators. People who didn't just wake up, who have been in it for so long that they're starting to feel like there may not be a way out. And now you're here, and they're rethinking it. And they're saying, hang on a second, this is the first time in history that this has been global, that this has been loud, that it's been uncensored, that people can hear us, and that we can share and disseminate information far, wide, and fast. These are the voices that you want to be listening to. And then, find out who their friends are. Smart people have smart friends. If we're talking Instagram, follow them all. If it's YouTube, go down the rabbit hole. Go, go, go. Find out who co-authored their article. Just look them up. You don't have to read every article, but look up who they are. What do they stand for? What's their point of view? What is Campaign Zero? Who started that? What's it attached to? Why did it come about? What's the origin of it? You're going to start to... You don't have to do this all in one day, but this is what I mean when I'm talking about educational growth. Start to get smart about the things that are happening to benefit this. Terminology, listen to the leaders. Next, get a book. Many of you have already gotten books. Awesome, great. I want you to go back through the book and do your terminology. Go deep on your terminology, because the book's going to sound different. But get a book. I spoke to somebody who said, like, I bought 5 books off Amazon. I've been reading 2 of them at the same time. Stop. I'm going to say something. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Read 1 book at a time. Read 1 book, no matter what. Why? There's no test. This isn't passing a test. And the way in which we've read books has been about passing tests for the longest time, even if we're not in school. We read books and we go, yeah, I kind of got it, move on. I'm arguing that this is not that. We are not smart enough to read multiple books. Read the book, close the chapter, think about it, apply it. Read the book, do the terminology, find a leader who's speaking about that thing, watch the thing, come back to the book. Treat it like a workbook. We're not smart enough to be doing double duty right now. We just started the class. How dare we, right? Terminology, listen to leaders, read a book. Find an anti-oppression workbook. Today, that sounds hard. When you get to this place on the journey, it'll show up. Some of these books are actually workbooks. Some of these books can be turned into workbooks. There are people in every city who are naturally inclined educators who are building curriculum on their Facebooks, on their Instagrams, on their personal websites, whatever it may be. You just have to start hopscotching, find out who the consulting companies are that are all Black or Indigenous or BIPOC, like whatever they fall into. Start mining through that. Like you'll be able to find anti-oppression training throughout the LGBTQ community, kind of I think worldwide. I'm assuming I know where to find it, both here and at home in Toronto. Find who the trained professionals are that make the distinction between lecturing and educating. Find the educators, the people who are asking you questions, who are curious about things and inviting your curiosity. They're both good. It's a different type of retention. I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, and he said lecturers tend to be speaking to people who already have a base of knowledge, whereas educators might be working with people who don't have a base of knowledge and don't necessarily know how to or where to start. And I think that's a great way to look at it. Find the educator. Find the person who is going to walk you through it with their work and buy it. Buy it. Pay for it. And when you have a friend and the friend is like, can I use it? Go like, yeah, but no. I'm going to ask you to buy it too. Because this work is worth something and this work is hard. And anybody who is an educator who's been able to put things in a logical order that allows you to grow, to engage your curiosity and grow, I mean, we should be paying them a lot more. they're some of the most valuable people in the world. That's 4. Terminology, listen to the leaders, read one book at a time, workbook, anti-oppression workbook. The last thing, and this one may be out of order because you just do this all the time, but the last thing for me, community conversations. This is the goal, I think. This is the place that we want to end up. We want to be talking to our peers who look like us, who don't look like us, from a place of new information, from being informed, but being informed not just intellectually. Sidebar, Yale University has released all of their African courses online, and you should be able to download it for free and begin doing the work. Just saying, if you want to learn history, you want to learn African American history from a certain time to a certain time, Yale, do it. They've released it. Why? Because everybody should have access to it. But that's not what I was going to say. This is the goal, right? Getting educated and speaking from a place of education, and then speaking things into existence. And we speak things into existence and we start to learn by risking failure, by risking vulnerability, by risking being wrong. We want to be wrong. We've already been wrong. We want to be wrong with people who might be able to say, did you hear that? I just heard that. Can we talk about that? Let's discuss it. And then let's run it through all the different filters and see if it can come out differently. We want to be challenged. We want to be ugly. We want to be uncertain. We want to be angry and confused in community conversations, in safe conversations, in conversations where we also want to be willing to change. And being willing to change for me is the willingness to do the work. So we talk about doing the work and the importance of doing the work and the difference between the PR and the actual work and the quiet work and the personal work. And for me, this is the how and the what. Start with your terminology. Get a book, get a workbook. I have a friend who is working on her stuff, and she has access to a lot of other people, and she made sure that she held up her book to show them that this work isn't passively sitting by the pool reading and then going for a swim when it gets too hot. This is sitting down and sweating from the heat of the information that you're learning, and from furiously scribbling it down. And if you're watching something, from pausing it and from flipping back and highlighting stuff and scribbling it in and opening your dictionary or your Google bot and getting a definition and deep diving on the history and making annotated notes. This is what the work looks like. Terminology, listen to the leaders, one book at a time, an anti-oppression workbook in some way, shape, or form, and community conversations. In today's Sunday sermon, Janaya talks about something, and this is linking back to the beginning of what I was offering. Is they say, good doesn't require performance. It just requires that you be. Being good doesn't require, it's not performative. There's no show to it. It's not for anyone else. It's about finding you and being in love with you and being at one with you. And through that, and these are their words, not mine, they're enlightened. I just talk a lot. You get to be the light. You get to be the thing that shines. And if you think back to my last video, this is in line with what I'm talking about. I don't think you need to be looking into somebody else's garden talking about their fertilizer, where they put their rocks in, and what pill bugs are eating their strawberries. No. Make your garden. Let them look over into your garden and go, oh, that's how you do it. I can do that too. There's no you're not doing it for anybody but you. You grow the love from inside of you, and they will see it. And if we are all here in this, doing this together, doing it for ourselves, doing it to find ourselves, to shed the projects within which we work, and to say, who do I show up as authentically in the world? And how often do I get to be wrong so that I can be better? We're going to start to see change. One last thing, I was watching Kendrick Sampson host a talk with Sherilyn Ifill, who is the president of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. I believe that's her title. And he asked a question. He was like, so what's next? And he's somebody you should be following too, I think. He says, what's next? And she very quickly kind of corrected the idea and said, it's not about what's next, but it's what's now. What are we doing now? Who are we now? What are we discovering now? If we start looking at what's next, we may go back to thinking about this checklist of I got this, anti-racist, now I can help with this other thing. No. The work is ongoing. You will create what's next by creating what's now, by empowering what's now. By being in the now, we discover what is in the next. This video, I took to the camera again because I had a moment with myself where I felt, as much as I do the work, I wasn't getting the work right. I wasn't doing the work, and I didn't do the work about this. This weekend, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and so a lot of things are being canceled in real life. But this is still my real life. It's Pride. And I want to be alive and in relationship to Pride, to Black Lives Matter, to my peers on this street who need education, my peers that I work with who are on their own journey of self-discovery. I want to be in that relationship, and I want that relationship to be alive. And the only way I can do that is if the relationship with myself is alive, if nothing is taken for granted. That's the work that I'm doing. That's the work that I'm proposing. And this is how I propose starting the work.